Hello and welcome. I'm going to be talking about transformational leadership's impact on the success of professional learning communities. I'm particularly interested in this because a lot of countries and a lot of schools are starting to implement professional learning communities, mostly because there's a lot of research out there that shows that professional learning communities have been successful in improving teacher practice, which we know also improves the successes of students in school. Um, However, there's a lot of times when these are implemented and teachers sort of view them as just another meeting they have to go to, and they aren't actually successful in achieving the goal of increasing teacher practice. And one of the major reasons for this is that there's a lack of leadership and there are improper leadership structures put in place. So I hope to sort of show how transformational leadership can provide the leadership and leadership structures needed to help professional learning communities be successful. I'll do that by first defining professional learning communities, also called PLCs. We know we love some acronyms in education. I'll define what they are. I'll talk about the benefits and for teachers and students, but I'll also talk a little bit about the challenges there as well. Then I'll define transformational leadership and talk about how transformational leadership can positively affect professional learning communities. And then hopefully I'll conclude by showing how transformational leadership in combination with PLCs increases the positive effects for teachers and students. So let's start by talking about what a professional learning community is. Professional learning communities are groups of teachers working together towards a common goal. These originally started in the business sector as part of the theory of social learning, which basically states that people learn by being active participants in communities. And the idea is that as they participate in these professional learning communities, they can learn together to become better practitioners based on the reflection and collaboration, all in order to solve some sort of problem of practice. In a school context, the professional learning communities are typically made up of teachers who are in the same grade level or teach the same subject. There are, however, professional learning communities that are action research based and are made up of lots of times teachers from lots of different grade levels or lots of different subject areas. And while most professional learning communities, when discussed, are within one school, there are professional learning communities that are created between different schools. Um, when you talk about a professional learning community, there are several features that sort of define what it is. And so there's several of them listed here. They include respect, mutual trust, a shared vision, responsibility, or shared responsibility, focus on students' outcomes, collaboration, critical feedback, and reflective dialogue. And all of those factors and features of a professional learning community help provide successful professional development. They provide an openness to experimentation so the teachers feel free to experiment in their lessons. And they also create implementation of innovative pedagogical strategies. So not only are they learning about these things, but they're implementing them into their classroom practice. Um, Again, this is when they're successful. So when professional learning communities are successful, there are several benefits to teachers, which then benefit students. The biggest benefits to teachers are improved practice, increased self-efficacy, and happiness in the workplace. So as teachers work in these professional learning communities and they feel that they're being valued by their colleagues and administrators and they're able to make decisions in their classroom, it increases their self-efficacy. They begin to do better in their practice, and that in turn affects student success. So students become more successful when their teachers are more successful. Professional learning communities are not without their challenges, and the biggest challenge is time. So teachers are notoriously overloaded with work. We really do not like to give up our time that we use for our own planning and helping out our students to attend another meeting. So if we don't see professional learning communities as being important, then we're less willing to give up that time. Also, if administrators or leaders within the school building are unwilling to set aside time for these communities, they're basically devaluing the importance of these professional learning communities. They're sending the message that they're not important. The second thing that's really important is creating common expectations and goals. In terms of goals, it's really important that across all of the professional learning communities in the school, teachers share a common understanding about what the purpose of the meeting and collaborating is. Why are they meeting, however often they're meeting, and what is the purpose of doing that? Having those expectations put in place in the meetings, make sure they flow well, but it also implies that they've done some sort of training with the teachers regarding how these meetings are supposed to run, as well as how they're supposed to collaborate with people and how they're supposed to participate in reflective dialogue and what that looks like. It creates a shared understanding and a shared language with teachers, which is helpful in any type of dialogue. But it also educates teachers on the research regarding why professional learning communities are so important. So you're creating a belief in teachers that this is an important thing to do. So there's increased teacher buy-in when you create these goals and expectations for things. Lastly, trust. So, no professional learning community is going to work well if there's not a feeling or a belief that teachers can be trusted by both their colleagues and their leaders to make decisions in their classrooms. So, if there is no trust there, they're less likely to share openly with their colleagues about their struggles, and they're less likely to experiment with new pedagogical practices, which sort of defeats the purpose of having these professional learning communities in the first place. So, transformational leadership comes in to save the day. Transformational leadership is defined here as transformational leaders help followers grow and develop into leaders by responding to individuals' followers' needs, by empowering them, and by aligning the objectives and goals of the individual followers, the leader, the group, and the larger organization. And so the key there is that you're creating and aligning goals and providing a vision essential, and that those things are essential to becoming a good transformational leader. Further research gives some other characteristics, which are listed in the image on the left. The really important ones that I'm going to talk about are adapting to teachers and students' needs, respecting teachers' decision-making ability, and providing moral support to teachers. So how can transformational leadership and those characteristics positively affect professional learning communities? The first way is that a transformational leader will help create a shared vision and goals in the school, and that they'll support those with structures that are put in place. And those structures could be the time in the day for these meetings to happen, and the expectations that for how the meetings will run. And all of that creates a culture within the school that supports professional learning communities and their success. The second thing transformational leaders can do is they can empower teachers by giving them the decision-making powers in their own classroom and in sometimes the schools. So what transformational leaders are doing there is they're giving teachers the leadership. And so transformational leaders will use distributed leadership practices, and that empowers the teachers to make their own decisions. It means that they're more likely to experiment with new practices that support their students' learning. And it also shows that they're being trusted. So we're developing that trust that's needed also. There's also research that shows when transformational leaders use distributed leadership structures, teachers are not only more invested in learning communities, but they also produce better products. And by products, I might mean common assessments. It might mean learning activities for their students, but the outcomes are better in terms of the products they produce. The last thing transformational leaders can do is that they can help build teacher self-efficacy and in turn collective efficacy. So self-efficacy is the belief that you can do things and that you can succeed. So transformational leaders help build this in their teachers by providing them with moral support. They'll recognize what teachers in their building already have this, but also the teachers that don't have high efficacy, and they'll provide them with positive feedback needed to help build that up. And as the teachers become more efficacious, And as they start to work better in their professional learning community, they'll start to build a collective efficacy or a belief in the group's ability to solve problems and positively affect their students. So the collective efficacy also supports the beliefs in valuing the time they spend collaborating with their colleagues. So all of these things are things that a transformational leader can do to help support professional learning communities. There's also a lot of research about types of leadership that don't work, specifically in schools and countries that have high power distance authoritarian leadership. Professional learning communities tend to be more about implementing new rules and expectations and less about teachers adapting to their students' needs or trying out new things because of what their students need, which basically means that there's no belief in the teacher's ability to make those decisions. And what that means is the teachers feel like they're not trusted, and they also feel like they can't trust themselves, or they are fearful because they don't feel trusted, and so they'll take less risk. There's less implementation of new strategies, and professional learning communities tend to fall apart because the teachers aren't feeling they're successful, and you end up with a lack of commitment from teachers, and all of that creates low self-efficacy and low group efficacy as well. So it's really important that whenever you're thinking about implementing professional learning communities, you really consider the leadership structures you have in place. And I hope today that I've shown you how transformational leadership can provide the supports that are needed to make professional learning communities successful. And I really hope that I've put forth the point that we have two main goals of all of this, and that's to help teachers be more successful in order to help students be more successful. And so I just want to sort of give us a little summary of how transformational leadership can improve teacher practice through professional learning communities. And so we want our professional learning communities to be successful. And in order to do that, transformational leaders have to help create a goal and a vision. They have to have trust and respect for their teachers, and they have to help teachers by supporting their self-efficacy and believing that they can actually do this, and they can do what's needed to be done for their students. So all of those things can be done within a professional learning community, but are supported by the leadership. And in turn, that leads to increased student success because we know that there's a direct link between improving teacher practice and increased student success. So any leader who's considering implementing professional learning communities really needs to consider the structures and the leadership structure specifically that they have in place at their school and how that's going to impact the teacher's abilities to be successful. Thank you so much. I have lots of references here. If you need them, you can obviously pause and look through. Have a great day.